We're going to look at something a little bit different today, and that is mental health and mental strength when you are trading. Now, I actually had quite a few videos lined up for the start of this year, but I've decided to instead do this one first because it's incredibly important for people who are not only just coming to trading, but people who have been trading for quite some time, and you don't really see or hear anyone talking about this. Now, when you first come to trading, there's this kind of ball of excitement that's kind of pushing you along. You're very ready and eager to get to the charts because you have this kind of vision of this linear line of progress that you're going to make. Now, once you then get into trading, and you've been trading for a few weeks, a few months, whatever it is, the kind of harsh realities start to set in. A lot of the time people kind of lose a lot of money, they just can't make things work, and it starts to become very, very difficult. Now, as a trader, and this is beginners and more advanced traders, it's a very lonely process. You don't tend to see people trading together. So I don't have somebody sitting next to me, a work colleague or a friend who's also trading. On top of that, you don't really have a lot of traders that you kind of speak to on a regular basis. So what happens is you sit down every day to trade, you go through that entire process, which is very, very stressful. And if you're having a difficult time, it kind of builds up inside you. There's not really an outlet. Family and friends, yeah, absolutely fantastic, but most of them don't understand trading. So when you go to them and you try and explain what's going on, and maybe you're having a really tough time mentally, they can sort of nod along and say, okay, yeah, I understand, and give you a little bit of advice, but it's not really coming from a place of understanding because they haven't put themselves through the stresses. And really, when they look at it, they think to themselves, you're just kind of buying and selling on these red and green candles. Why is it so stressful? Over the years, I've been emailed by people from every background imaginable. And I'm not exaggerating. I've had soldiers, ex-servicemen, doctors, surgeons, accountants, lawyers, and all of them saying to me that nothing in their life had prepared them for the stresses that they go through when they sit down at that computer and they watch those little red, little green candles and they decide when to buy and when to sell. Now, your mental health and your mental strength when you're trading, it's one of the key components to trading successfully, and it's kind of like a vicious circle. So if you have, or you're going through maybe a dark period mentally, that will affect your trading. Now, if you are going through a tough time trading, so let's say you're running through a drawdown, that can affect you. It can send you into this kind of much darker place that follows you around for the remainder of the day, the remainder of the week. Now, that kind of loops back on itself because you're starting to feel lower, because you're starting to feel that kind of anxiety inside your body. You take that back to your trading and it starts working in a vicious circle. The lower you feel, the worse your trading becomes. The lower you feel, the worse your trading becomes. And it just kind of spirals out. And that's when you tend to get things like emotional trading, or it might not be emotional trading that you're noticing. It might just be runs of losses, but they are being directly impacted by the way you are feeling and by the way you are coming to the charts. As a trader, you have to understand, it's so important that it's okay to feel like shit. It's okay to go through very, very dark periods, but you have to understand that just kind of trying to power through it is just going to do more damage. You're spending a lot of time alone, you're putting yourself through a lot of different stresses, and if you're not giving yourself the time to kind of recover a little bit, it's just a recipe for disaster. As I've mentioned, it kind of works in that vicious circle. One of the kind of most important things that I learned is that when it comes to trading, so think about anything else in life, anything you're trying to do, you're starting a business, maybe you're learning a new hobby, new language, whatever it is, you're learning a new sport or a new martial art. We live in a society which kind of teaches you that the more effort you put in, the more time you put in, the more focus you put in, the better you are going to do. And for a lot of things, it does work. You know, it might drive you into the ground, but you do make the progress. With trading, you have to understand that rather than going through the tough period, and rather than, you know, waking up and feeling absolutely miserable and not wanting to go to the charts, and then forcing yourself to do it because you're thinking, I'm just going to power through this, I need to keep working, I need to keep moving forwards. It can be a lot better to recognize when you're having those states of mind and just step back a little bit, just take a break. Because if you don't, all that happens is you keep driving yourself further and further and further into the ground, because you're putting yourself into these situations over and over and over again. You're making yourself deal with the uncertainty. You're kind of forcing all of those emotions to come forward over and over and over again, and they start to strengthen. It's okay to take a little bit of time away from the charts. That is not failing, it's not you know, being weak or anything like that. It's actually very, very good for you as a trader. I don't trade up until the market close. I start in the morning, and no matter what happens, well, in fact, I can't say that, because sometimes if I've got a very, very high probability area I'm watching, I will kind of still sit at the charts. But for everything else, when it gets to 3 o'clock, at the latest, usually 2:30, I'm done. I walk away from the charts, because I know that's kind of enough enough stress, enough focus that I've put in. I know if I keep going, I'm likely going to dip, I'm likely going to make mistakes. I'm taking into account my own mental strength and my own mental well-being. If I wake up in the morning and I've had absolutely no sleep, or I've had a very, you know, fitful sleep, I will, well, the great thing is for me now is I have a girlfriend who has kind of learned the basics of trading just through watching me go through it. So she can kind of sense when I'm having one of those, you know, those down periods. And she says to me quite openly, she'll just say, you're too tired to trade, or you shouldn't be trading when you're feeling like this. And initially I kind of go, oh, you know, be quiet, I'm absolutely fine, what are you talking about? But invariably she is correct, and it kind of comes back home to me. And then all I do is when I sit down at the charts, I'll either start a little bit later, I'll go and, you know, grab a coffee and I'll just sit in the kitchen for a little while, or I'll become more aware of my potential weaknesses, and I certainly won't trade around the open. You know, I'll wait the first half hour, and then I'll get into the charts. Because I know that by that time I've woken up a little bit more, and maybe I'm feeling a little bit better. Another kind of quick thing I want to touch on is when people are learning to trade, or even when you've been trading for quite some time, if you have been trying to kind of punch your way through this low feeling, this, you know, you can call it depression, you can call it anxiety, you can just call it a low mood, whatever it is. When you start to feel really, really low because things aren't going the way you want it to go, there can come a point where you stop enjoying what you're doing. So think back to talking about that excitement when you come to the charts. There can come a point when you absolutely dread it, when you no longer enjoy it, and yet you're still forcing yourself to do it over and over and over again. If you're going to keep doing it in that way, you're not going to see the type of improvement that you want to see. I know it sounds counterintuitive, because in your head you're thinking, you know, to master something, you have to spend 10,000 hours doing it. So if I just keep going and keep sitting at the charts, I'm going to get better. To master something, and a 10,000 hour rule, it has to be effective training when you're sitting down and you're learning something. You can't just show up and just go through the motions. You have to be learning, and you have to be progressing. And if you are feeling very, very low, and if you're dreading it, and if you hate it, and if you're absolutely terrified to get into a trade, and as soon as you have a loss, you know, you just seem to crumble and fall apart, you're not learning. You're not learning how to deal with the emotions, and you're not really making any progress. It's okay to just take a little break. You know, you have to understand and tell yourself you're doing something that is not natural for humans, for any human really. It's very, very difficult. You're putting yourself under enormous pressure, and it's okay to feel like crap and to need a little bit of a break. It's okay to step back and take a day off. It's okay not to start at 7 in the morning and instead come down at 9 in the morning one day because you really needed to get that sleep. And yeah, you'll probably come down, you'll probably look at the charts and you'll have missed a trade. The number of times that's happened to me, I cannot even express it, how frustrating it is. But you know what I do? I come down, and if I'm that frustrated, I force myself to have a little bit of more time away from the charts so I can reset, because I understand that one of the main attributes is me. I am the person initiating the trading plan. I'm the person managing the trading plan. And it's the exact same for you. You are your strongest asset as a trader, but you can also be your greatest liability. And you have to understand that mental strength, going through periods of kind of weaker mental health is normal. All traders go through it fairly regularly, if I'm being honest with you. You have to give yourself the time away from the charts. You have to allow yourself to look after yourself. Because if you're serious about learning to trade, if you're serious about doing this long term and making money, you have to look after what is potentially going to be your biggest asset as a trader, and that is yourself. Okay, so I had no idea where that video was going to go, but hopefully it is helpful. I've kind of touched on everything I really wanted to touch on. It is such an important subject that I don't see enough people talking about. Us traders, we pretend like we're really, really tough and we just power through it, but we're sitting alone in offices day after day after day, and it can get tough. Okay guys, so as always, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you're all going to have a fantastic trading week, a fantastic start to the year. I'm James Orr, and thank you.